Hello, and welcome back to the Collin Cadmus Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Adam Liebman, my first VP of Sales, who hired me out of my retail job at CVS and trained me into becoming a top salesperson at SinglePlatform. Adam graduated from the University of Missouri-Columbia in 2008 and then started his career in sales at Yext, which was founded by Howard Lerman, who I interviewed in episode 15. He was then recruited out of Yext to become the VP of Sales at SinglePlatform, which was founded by Wiley Cerilli, who I interviewed in episode 2. Adam led sales at SinglePlatform from its infancy to being acquired for $100 million by Constant Contact, and not only taught me how to prospect and sell, but then taught me how to take over the hiring and training of salespeople at SinglePlatform, which launched my career into sales leadership. After SinglePlatform, Adam founded a social app called Squad, which aimed to help groups of people make plans and meet up in major cities, similar to Tinder, but for friend groups. After Squad, Adam went back to sales leadership at Flexport, Seated, and Renify, until landing his most recent and current position as VP of Inside Sales at Steno. Adam has also served as a consultant, advisor, and investor to dozens of top startups. Needless to say, he's done a lot, and it's been a long time since we last spoke. So I'm excited to catch up on his journey and get his thoughts on all that's changing in B2B sales. Before we get started, if you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave us a comment if you have questions or feedback. If you're joining us from Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review and let us know what you think of the episode. This stuff really helps to grow the audience. Without further ado, let's dive in. Adam, thanks for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to see you, and it's great to catch up.
Likewise, man. It's been way too long. I'm going to change things up a bit on this episode since we've got a long history together.
Sure.
And so, for people who are maybe just tuning in, previous episodes, I've been going through a bunch of the same questions, getting people sort of updates on some things that are happening in the industry, hot topics for me, sort of debate topics I've been having on LinkedIn. But I want to go back a bit here, and I want to get a sense, really go back to sort of, the last that we've probably fully caught up on, which is really SinglePlatform, and get a sense of, if you can start, I think, give the audience an overview of what you built at SinglePlatform. And then I want to sort of get into your head on how that led you into Squad.
Yeah, absolutely. So, joined SinglePlatform. I knew one of the other founding members, Kenny Herman, and we'd always talked about building a business together. And he hit me up. He said, "Hey, I'm joining this thing. You got to come and run sales." And so I met with Wiley, as you know, just an unbelievable guy. And he said,
Both of them.
You're the person to both of them. You're the person to come in and kind of build this team. So I joined as the VP of sales. I was 24 years old. I was a VP of one myself. And for the first 9 months, I was literally just cold calling restaurants all day, trying to sell them a variety of things. We went through 3 different business models until we landed on what SinglePlatform became, menu distribution online. And it was a great experience. And then once we got it to this place where it felt like, okay, this is scalable, this is repeatable, we've got a process that works. It's not just working because it's me on the phones, it's working because it's a good process. We started hiring, and then we kept hiring and we kept hiring. We grew that team to 120 people at its peak. We went from 0 to 30 million in revenue. We got acquired, like you said, by Constant Contact. And then from there, it was a great experience. I felt like we kind of got to a place where I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I stayed for a couple years post-acquisition. The day-to-day of running the sales floor is very different, obviously, with directors like yourself handling the training, with people running, managers of managers. And it was just time for a change. I felt like I'd done everything I needed to do at SinglePlatform. Wiley had left. And so that led to, what are you going to do next? And I had actually been on a trip with Wiley, Kenny, and Pete, kind of the core group of the SinglePlatform founding team. And we came up with this idea for Squad. And we said, hey, you know what? This is a really fun way to go out and meet people. And so I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. And Wiley at the time was at First Round Capital. And he said, listen, if you want to do this, I will help you raise money and make it happen. And so that's what we did. I went out, I pitched First Round, I pitched Lair. We ended up raising a couple $1 million to build Squad. It was an incredible experience. I learned so much. It was also wildly unsuccessful. But the big takeaway was like sales is my superpower. That's where I should be spending time. I had a bunch of other learnings as well. We can get into that if you want, but that was kind of the idea. It was a fork in the road moment. It was go back to that sales leadership role, which I knew, and just do it again and take a company from Series A to exit, or take a chance, start something that's totally different but really passionate. And so I said option two, and absolutely no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the journey of you starting Squad. First of all, I was like, that's a fucking brilliant idea, because I think people turn to the dating apps. And I think this is how you figured it out. Is like you were almost using Tinder with a group of friends trying to find people to go out with in
Yeah,
like, a city you were visiting. And you're like, there should just be Tinder for groups, basically.
exactly.
So I remember thinking, like, brilliant idea. And as you got into it, you started hosting, I forget what you called them, but like launch parties or something,
Yeah.
right? Where you would try to get people to sign up and stuff. And that was the moment that I think I read an article or something where you were promoting that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, like he really can't use the skills that he used at Single Platform to grow this, right? Like this is a whole new thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you can translate some of the sales skills and whatnot, but it's very like you can't just hire a sales team and like
No.
start cold calling people to join an app. And I remember thinking to myself, it was the first time I really walked through in my head of like, what is it? How do you start that? Because, and then I started doing some, I don't know, Googling around because I remember getting curious because it made me think to myself, how the hell do you start a social media app? Because what happens when the first person joins and no one's there? They just
Yeah.
delete the app. And then you would just keep repeating the cycle. So that I was like, oh, that's why he has to do launch parties because you have to get a shitload of people to sign up all at once.
Yep.
And I had never even thought of that. And that opened my eyes like, wow, this is really, really hard. And is it sort of like, is the business model really when you try to start this type of thing, like it either is going to catch on fast or it just doesn't?
So I think it's either going to catch on at some point or it doesn't. And you have a couple swings to try and make that happen. And we certainly did. But one of the things I learned, sales and marketing, very different. And this was a marketing function and getting people to join. And the most I could use my sales skills was going to the bars and walking up to groups of women and saying, hey, let me run an idea by you and get some feedback. And then
Yeah.
having them tell me, oh my God, this is a great idea. Oh, well, it's actually in the app store. It's called Squad. And getting them to download it. I remember it was so validating. There was a time at 310 Bowery Bar, walked up to this group of women, pitched them Squad. They downloaded it. 10 minutes later, they tapped me on the shoulder. They were leaving to go meet a group of guys that was nearby on
Nice.
Squad. Unbelievable moment. Not enough of those moments happened for us to
Yeah.
be the next Tinder. Tinder even tried doing this with something called Tinder Social. And to this day,
I remember that. Yeah.
people still say it's a great idea. It used to be more, but at this point, I got one last month. I get an email or a LinkedIn request from someone that essentially says, I was thinking about starting something like Squad. Seems like a great idea. I was doing my research, came across your company. Would you talk to me about why it didn't work? And so I always get on the line and I talk to them and I try and be helpful. It would be amazing to see someone figure this out. But I think one other learning that I'll share with you, my biggest regret by a mile was not taking more big swings. And the easiest big swing was I got connected to Sean Rad, who is the founder of Tinder. And we had a phone call. It went great. This was before Tinder Social was fully rolled out. And so Sean emails me and he's like, hey.
Was he still at Tinder?
Oh, he was still at
Yeah,
Tinder.
yeah.
Absolutely. This was 2015. And so he says, do you want to come and spend a day with me and the team in LA? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. But also in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm a startup founder. I can't be paying to fly across the country for a 1 hour meeting with the Tinder CEO. Like, that's irresponsible. So I basically insinuated that they needed to fly me out because they had invited me and I wasn't going to pay for that. It was irresponsible. That led to the meeting essentially being canceled. He was like, oh, well, we got to reschedule, blah, blah, blah. And then that's the story of how I didn't take over running Tinder Social, right? And there were a couple moments like that.
So you think he wanted to recruit you?
Yeah, maybe he wanted
Yeah.
to recruit me. I would have learned a ton. I respect the hell out of Sean Rad, what he built, the way Tinder grew. And so had I just paid the $1,000 for a round trip ticket to go to LA for this meeting, who knows what would have happened. And I think there were some moments throughout the journey where I was so focused on being like a good steward of capital that I blocked myself from taking some big swings, which for a social app, for a consumer app, sometimes you got to do. And
Yeah.
it got to the point, and I'll never forget this piece of advice. Ben Lehrer. So I go in to meet to catch up on the business, and we had a bunch of money in the bank. We had, I think, $400,000 left of the
You raised what, 2 million?
We raised 1.7. And so we had 400,000 left. We were burning about 40K a month. So we had 10 months of runway. But the growth had kind of stalled. And I said, listen, if it were up to you, if the two choices were wind this thing down and return capital, or like take some really big swings and just totally go for it, which would you prefer? Without hesitation, he goes, oh, return capital for sure. You were trying to find a needle in a haystack already. Now you are trying to find a needle in a field full of haystacks and you don't even know which one it's in. And I thought the analogy was so accurate and appropriate. And so we gave ourselves another, I think, 45 days to basically try and figure something out that would make it pop. Nothing really happened. We wound it down. And surprisingly, I got a lot of kudos from my investors for returning capital. Because in the startup game, no one really does that. They go until it's at zero. And so I thought that was great. It worked out really well. And again, I came out of that knowing that my superpower is sales, and that's what I should be spending my time on.
Awesome. I kind of had a feeling that was the story. I sort of filled in the gaps in my head, imagination style, but that makes sense. I'm curious to ask you this because I've kind of had this theory when I look at like how TikTok went so viral and how some of these apps go viral. And I imagine you've learned this through the process, or maybe even considered doing it, or maybe did some of it. But to go back to sort of my thought there before of like, how do you start out with no users and like you get people to join and they're like, well, no one's here, so fuck this. Like, do you have to create bot users in the beginning? Is that just like a standard default, like you have to, or no?
So I can't speak to the way consumer apps are growing in 2024. That game evolves really quickly. We never had any fake profiles. You just get people you know to sign up, and you do word of mouth, and you say, listen, it's not going to be a huge marketplace of people yet, but give it a second and see. That was one of the issues and tricky parts about something like Squad is on a Tinder, it's asynchronous. You can do it anytime you want, and it's one person at a time. This was groups of people, ideally synchronous, like we're both out on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And so you can get through a lot of people really quickly. And that window, that half-life of a match is much shorter than something like a one-on-one dating app. So the idea on the surface, it made sense. Everyone loved it. But the execution from a product perspective was just really, really difficult.
Makes sense. Is that so? I guess that's why you try to sort of launch one city at a time too, right? So there's
yeah,
sort of
you
like
have
density.
to do it that way. We actually did open it up to everyone. At one point, we were running extremely effective Facebook ads. I think we were actually the first people to popularize the fake texts as an ad format, which now you see everywhere. We were the first people doing that and making up conversations that people were having on Squad.
Cool.
And it took off. It was like wildfire. I think at our peak, we got like 75,000 downloads. Most of them were in New York. But I think there were multiple 5,000 download days, which we were like, oh my gosh, is this working? And like, spoiler alert, it was not. But it was still really exciting, really fun, and a great chapter. I learned so much.
Could you sell the code base to someone who's asking you about maybe starting it today?
No, you wouldn't even probably build using the same tools. And the code base at this point, you see what's out there. You could probably replicate a lot of that stuff with something like Cursor in hours.
Got it. So it's all in the dust at this point.
Essentially, yeah.
But a lot of learning and probably a lot of fun along the way. Right?
Yeah, a lot of learning, a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what was it like going back into sales leadership? I mean, you bounced around from a couple companies. Did you have trouble finding one you loved? Did you what was the thought process there in terms of like, I guess not only just finding the right employer, but you're also coming out of SinglePlatform, right? Which was a tremendous success.
Yes.
And it's like, it wasn't just that things went well there. It was like the perfect team, the perfect founding group, the perfect everything. You can't replicate that. And I know from my own experience, like, it kind of tried to, kind of hoped I could, and kind of like maybe went through like a little bit of mourning period in my head when I eventually realized that like nothing's going to ever be SinglePlatform again. Did you go through anything similar like that? Was it almost surprising to you at one point? I know it was for me, like when I went to doctor.com, I sort of just thought I could kind of create the same thing. Yep. And in some ways we did, but also like it was totally different. And I eventually had to accept that. I'll throw it to you. I mean, did you have a similar experience?
I did. I think, you never know you're in the good old days until they're gone, right?
Yeah.
And Single Platform was still to this day the best environment, the best place I've ever worked. What we built there, the team we built it with was 10 out of 10, no notes. I think I felt like that would be so easy to find in whatever it was I did next. And
Yeah.
it was quite difficult. After Squad, I didn't immediately go full time anywhere. I actually fell into consulting thanks to Wiley. He made a ton of intros to a bunch of startups in New York City that needed sales help, and it wasn't the right full time fit. But there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And so I joined these companies in a variety of capacities, working with them for 2 weeks, 4 months, 3 days, whatever made sense, just trying to help accelerate revenue. And then eventually I landed in the full-time roles and I moved to LA and I went to Flexport.
Oh, that's right.
Flexport.
You moved to LA. I forgot that you made that move. Yeah.
Yeah, so I moved to LA for Flexport. I was at a point in my New York journey where I felt like, hey, maybe I want to go experience another city. And Flexport needed a head of sales. They were a first round company. I was obviously a first round founder. SinglePlatform was a first round company. And so they needed someone to run sales in the LA office. But it was not a good fit. And I'm very candid and open about that. When I joined Flexport, they were a 700 person company. When I left Flexport 7 months later, they were an 1,100 person company.
Wow.
And that was very different than the
Yeah.
environments I was used to. And I learned that I want to be at a smaller company where there is more authority and agency, and you can get things done and you can iterate, and there's not the politics, there's not the red tape, and you just have to play the game a little bit differently if you're at a fast growing billion-dollar valuation 700 person company. And I just wasn't prepared for that in my career. And so ended up getting an opportunity to come back to New York. Wasn't intending on that, but someone I had worked with in the consulting days, this guy Bo, had co-founded a company called Seated with this guy Bryce. And they lured me. It was a brilliant move. Someone should totally steal this if you're ever recruiting. So I was in town. They wanted to meet with me. I was coming back for a consulting engagement. They were trying to convince me to join full time and move back to New York. And so I told them that I was in New York and I was actually going to be getting dinner with Wiley, Kenny, and Pete at Zuma, this Asian spot. It's really great. So we had breakfast that morning, Bo, Bryce, and myself. They pitched me on why I should join. I mentioned this to them. I don't think anything of it. I go to dinner that night with Wiley, Kenny, and Pete, and they come over. They say, yeah, is one of you Adam Liebman? I'm like, yeah, that's me. They say, okay, just want to let you know, this is at the end of the meal. We've been ordering drinks, all the food, everything. They say, this is on us. Bo and Bryce called, and they wanted to take care of the bill. So I'm looking like an absolute stud in front of my very good friends. And we all that was, I thought, just such a classy gesture.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of the reason that I ended up going with them. There were a couple other opportunities, but I said, okay, these are people I want to work with. This was incredible. What a nice gesture. And then I joined Seated. And honestly, Seated was as close to the next Single Platform as anything I've done. But COVID ruined that business. I joined pre-Series A. We raised a $10 million Series A at a $40 million valuation from Insight. 3 months later, we raised a $20 million Series B at a $120 million valuation. 3 months later, we go from $200K a month in revenue to $1 million a month in revenue. This happens over 10 months. We go from 10 million in GMV to 50 million in GMV annually, same time frame. We launch in new markets. It could not have been going better. Selling to restaurants, very similar motion. It was great. And then overnight, our revenue literally went to $0. We furloughed the sales team.
Because it was restaurant reservations, right?
This was helping restaurants fill excess inventory, fill excess tables. And then after COVID, 90% of our revenue was from New York. You couldn't eat inside of a New York restaurant. There were no excess tables. We had no idea when that stuff was going to change. And so the business essentially today still technically exists, but they took on a ton of dilutive capital, ended up doing a recapitalization. It is a totally different business now. And it's one of those, big what ifs. If COVID had never happened, we were going to the moon. People thought the app was too good to be true. You're earning money for going out to eat. It sounded crazy, but it was working, and restaurants were using it. There's been iterations on that model. If you look at a company called In Kind, they do something very similar where you can basically pay $1,000 to get $1,500 worth of food at any of the In Kind restaurants. And so obviously these restaurants sign up to be an In Kind restaurant, and then I, as the consumer, consumer can put my check number in, pay with my in-kind balance, and I got like extra money from in-kind to go spend at these restaurants. It's a great model. They're raising, I think, at a multi-billion-dollar valuation right now. And it's like, what could have been with Seated? So went to Seated, and then obviously COVID kind of ruined that business. Ended up joining a company called Renify, giving people loans explicitly to renovate their homes. Was a really great business when the interest rates were very low. Unfortunately, as the interest rates started to go up, people were less inclined to do $200,000 renovations to their house. Coming out of COVID, everyone wanted to do renovations. They needed that extra office, that extra room, build on the garage, whatever it might be. But then the interest rates started going up and that demand started to subside. And I was brought in to build a team and to scale a team, and the business conditions just didn't support that. So that was kind of another just not black swan, but just unfortunate market condition situation. And then I found Steno, or Steno found me, another first round company. I had worked with our co-founder, Greg, when he was at Reserve, another restaurant technology company. They started telling me about this court reporting business they were building. And I was like, that's kind of boring. And they're like, well, it's a $7 billion boring industry. And so I went to run inside sales back in March of last year. And it has been truly an unbelievable experience. So much fun. I feel like I'm selling the best product I've ever sold. Our team is amazing. The business is so functional and real. And I'm very, very excited about what we're going to do in 2025. But that's kind of the career progression. I think the question was like, how do you decide who you want to work with? And I think my big takeaway, the number one thing is working for people that you trust and that trust you. That's the thing. You can do anything at any company as long as you have the executive support or essentially leadership support, whatever that looks like. For me, that's the CEO at Steno. And if he and the president are bought in on the way that I want to do things, we can accomplish anything. Conversely, if doing anything requires pushing a boulder up a hill and you guys don't see eye to eye, it is rarely going to work out. And I think when I look back at the orgs where it hasn't been as strong of a fit, it's been that lack of trust in both ways, right? Me not agreeing with the direction that someone wants to take the business, and the people in charge not thinking that I'm doing the best thing for the business either. And so if you can get to that agreement and you feel like you know each other, it's a great fit. And so that's why I think working for people you've already worked for is always like a cheat code. And then also, I have a buddy in market right now. He's obsessed with this idea of consulting for a company before he goes full time because he wants to make sure that it's a good fit. I think that's another good strategy. Some companies are a little anti that. They want someone in the seat full time. They're not trying to hire a consultant. But I think if you go into the process saying, listen, I'm looking for full time. I just want to start in some sort of consultant or part-time or advisory capacity so we can get to know each other and make sure it is actually a good fit, you're going to save a lot of headache. Because all day we read about the average tenure of a VP of sales and it's so short and all this other sort of stuff. And you go through 3 and it's, the person for the A is not for the B and et cetera, et cetera. So anything we can do to kind of minimize that risk, I think is in everyone's best interest, and finding that trust and really having it with each other. That's what I think leads to success.
Bingo. That's why I got into consulting. I mean, it was also partially like COVID happened. I lost my job at Aircall. They were basically pumping the brakes on hiring, and I had built out a whole management and director team underneath me. I took them remote successfully, and the plan was to hire a bunch more people, and then that plan got cut short. So it was like, well, what do we need a VP for right now? And they were right. You really didn't. I had everything running itself so that I could hire, and now we weren't going to hire. And literally that was my plan, was like, I'm going to focus on hiring. I have all of this in place. So it's like when hiring gets cut, I'm like, fuck, like I kind of just like really screwed myself there. But yeah. What do you think has changed the most? I mean, now that you're digging back in, and I guess we'll talk a little bit in a couple questions about sort of how you're selling at Steno, but I guess I'll lay a little bit of a foundation here for what we did at SinglePlatform. And we were very SMB, heavy outbound. We were not sending emails. We were pounding the phones, 100 to 200 cold calls a day, following a rigid script that we knew worked. Are you doing the same thing today, or has it evolved a lot? And did you see the same thing happening at each company you went to? In other words, if you're doing the same thing today, is it because you found the right company where that works, and you've maybe seen that wouldn't have worked at some of the other companies? Kind of walk me through that.
That's a fair question, right? I think I have a relatively unique skill set. Like I know the lane that I want to be in, right? And it's not the right format to go close 8-figure enterprise contracts, that's for sure. But largely we're doing the same things. I think a lot of sales is zigging when other people zag. And we're still, I think the term is like the great ignore. And I think we're finally starting to feel the effects of that. But that was felt obvious to me from like very early on. Like, sure, you can use outreach and you can press the button and you're going to get some sales, but like that's not really selling. And you're going to burn through so many leads relative to what a highly trained, skilled group of actual salespeople can convince a group of other people to do and to buy. We have a verbatim script at Steno. We iterate on it. It's a living, breathing document. We get suggestions and feedback from the team constantly. I saw a LinkedIn post, and I don't remember who said it. It was just the other day, but they said, sales is not complicated. It's just hard. Yeah. And I think that's so spot on. And a lot of people want to have you believe that it's complicated and it's complex. Yeah. And every product and the way to sell it's a snowflake situation, and it's really not. Yeah. There are some fundamental truths, and you can build a story and have that story go in a certain order that is most likely to achieve the desired outcome. And what you see is, obviously there's more than one way to skin a cat. No doubt.
I was just going to say, you used to say there's more than one way to skin a cat, but there's the best way to skin the cat, right?
There's the best way to skin the cat. Yeah. And why would you ever not want to do it the best way? And the reason that you will hear from people, both leaders and ICs alike, is, well, if I skin the cat this way, I'll make this sale. And if I skin the cat that way, I'll make that sale. And I am smart enough to know that sometimes I do this and sometimes I do that. And then I make both sales instead of just the one. What I have found in practice is that's not the case, and people just default to the path of least resistance, right? Mm-hmm. We as humans generally want to avoid conflict, but the best salespeople I know lean into conflict. They ask the tough question, challenger mindset, right? And so that is not the default for most people, and they want to make it more complex or complicated, and that ultimately doesn't get you more of the sales. And so we have a process at Steno. It's a great process. It is not the best possible process that it could be, but it will continue to get better. But I believe that there's a story and there's a way to tell it, and it's just like the alphabet. I can say all 26 letters, but they go in order A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Yeah. And so there's a better way to say it. Maybe I want to talk about the problem that I'm solving first. Maybe I want to talk about why I was calling you first. But one of those things is better to talk about first 90% of the time. So everyone should be talking about it in that way. That is going to help you achieve the desired outcome in the highest percentage of opportunities. And so that's the way that I still think about it. That's the way I break it down. I still think sales is an extremely mental game, especially in a high velocity, transactional, outbound motion. 95% of the dials we make at Steno are outbound. We have email now that runs in the background, but it's really just for air cover. I've been lucky enough that we hired an incredible marketing person. So we are getting some inbound. But the bottom line is we pick up the phone, we talk to decision makers, and we explain to them why they need to do things differently than the way they're doing them now. And the way that some of the things that I always talk about to my sales team is, if the lawyers we speak to, we sell to attorneys. If the lawyers we speak to understand Steno the way that we understand Steno, every single one of them is going to work with us. And so there is a delta of information. There are incorrect assumptions being made. And it is our job as salespeople to use our words to help correct those incorrect assumptions, to help them understand things the same way we understand things, and essentially convince them to think differently about something than what they were thinking about it before. And if you can do that, that is sales. To me, sales is not meeting someone in the middle of a buying journey and making it easy for them to buy. It is not taking someone who has decided they want to do something and helping them do it. It is convincing them to do something they did not want to do. And I think a lot of that has gotten lost over the past 5-ish, maybe even 8-ish years with these tools that help you, and we need to do all this tracking, and we're not even going to talk to people unless an SDR has qualified them. Like, I get it. I understand why that makes your life easier, but that is so much less of a sale than convincing someone who doesn't want to take a meeting that they should listen to you for 5 minutes and spend 30 more going through a demo. And so, that's I'll get off my soapbox, but like that to me is the sales that a lot of people, the sales methodology that a lot of people are not so familiar with, which puts people that do know the things that we did at Single Platform, if you can implement those sorts of playbooks and you can get people running like that, you're going to have a ton of success.
Are you guys cold emailing or are you just doing cold calls?
So we do have an email sequence that we enroll people in using HubSpot, and it runs in the background. It's a kind of a Mad Libs email, so it doesn't get caught in the spam filters. There's like 7 different versions. It's I think a 6 email sequence over 17 days, and it is literally just there to help make it more likely that when we're calling, they're going to take the call because they're like, oh yeah, I think Steno's been emailing me. I should talk to them. What's going on here? And that's the extent of it.
So it's a multi-thread, basically. Try to be in more places than once.
Sure.
What's it like cold calling lawyers? Are they? I would imagine that some of them are, looking up the laws on cold calls and making threats and being hotheads. Is there a lot of that, or not so bad?
It's not so bad. It's very interesting. I think that selling to lawyers, it's my favorite sale I've ever had, and I think our product at Steno is the strongest product market fit that I've ever had.
Is it because they're high IQ and you can speak rationally and logically?
It's so rational. And so the ability to convince them is there. And if they listen, they do understand it. We start off and we tell them and we say, essentially, with the ability to defer payment, to pay at the end of the case instead of having to come out of pocket immediately, would that be valuable? Obviously, that's valuable. If I tell you, hey, Collin, you owe me $100, you can pay me right now, or you can just pay me in a year. Still $100, no interest, just pay me in a year. Obviously, paying in a year is financially better. There are no scenarios where paying me today is better. There aren't. It is not. There's no factual reason why paying me a year from now would be better. Paying me today would be better. And so we ask them that, and they get it. And they're like, yeah, that would be better. This sounds awesome. And they give us what I call like a raw, naked yes to this very important question. They're just like, yeah, that sounds good. There's no qualifier. There's no but. They are into it and they like it. And so that's really exciting to sell a product like that. Obviously, it is a high velocity motion. So we also don't have to do a demo. We do everything over the phone. We actually demo people after they've already used our product.
Oh, wow.
Kind of interesting. But the value of a law firm to us, $0 for them to work with us. It's all usage based. But we know that the value of a law firm is roughly $17,000 to $20,000. So that's a pretty meaty sale for a 11-minute phone call, right? And that lets us pay really competitively. That lets us be relatively profitable. Like, it's a really fascinating business. And we figured out this kind of rinse and repeat coin operated motion that truly does help attorneys and gets to the point really quickly.
Love it. So it reminds me a little bit of selling to doctors, because I went from Single Platform and then Wiley introduced me to doctor.com. And I want to give you a shout out too, because I don't remember if you introduced me to Aircall. I know you helped me get the job, put in a good word for me.
Yes.
I think maybe a recruiter talked to me and I saw Aircall on your consulting and somehow, but you definitely helped me get that. And so, Wiley helped me get doctor.com. You helped me get Aircall. It's been like a Single Platform mafia a bit. Have you been, I guess I'm throwing us off track here, but a little bit, but has it been quite humbling over the years watching how many people you've taken straight out of college to teach entry-level sales to, who are now founders, CROs, VPs of sales? I mean, you name it, man. I've lost track of how much success has come out of that company. And they were all just people that either you or eventually myself trained in entry-level sales. Like, it's wild. I know for me, just seeing someone like Lee Rosins, who I remember training, like, it's got to be wild, right, to see that, because it's
the best.
A lot of people.
Absolutely the best. And I hope someone said this after I was no longer at Single Platform, but I want Steno to be a company that you are proud to say you worked at. And I think we can very much say that about Single Platform. I feel very lucky that Wiley was willing to take a chance on me, that we put together the team we put together, and I think we did things the right way. And it's been really cool to see everyone's success. There's nothing greater than watching all of that happen. I'll give a big shout out, Chris Thompson, co-founder at Picky, building that.
Oh, that's right. Yes. That's
hands.
who I went to Colorado with.
Yeah. So that sort of stuff is really cool.
Yeah, it's wild, man. And I feel like it's a lot of people from Single Platform. Like, it's a dense, like, there's a tremendous amount of success that came out of there. Almost every person that I remember from there is doing something pretty big now.
Yeah.
which is awesome. I want to get your thoughts on the growth at all costs model or
Sure.
mindset. I'm not sure if you use that term. I mean, the general notion here is like there's kind of two different ways it seems like to scale a company today. It seems like, for the last 10, 20 years, it was mostly all growth at all costs. If you had some product market fit, you had some good traction.
Yep.
Let's pour fuel on that fire and let's just go for it with the top line growth. I guess a two-part question. How are you guys selling at Steno and thinking about that? I mean, are you just trying to aim for profitability, or are you also just going crazy with the fuel on the fire? Did COVID sort of pivot the way that they thought about that? Take it away.
So I'll give a shout out to Sam Jacobs because I think he might have been the one to invent PEG, profitable, efficient growth. The concept obviously has been around for a while, like create a profitable business, but I thought he started writing about it in a really articulate way. And I think it's a nice contrast between the growth at all costs. We have been lucky that we've been able to kind of blend it. We're in a very comfortable cash position. We announced a $46 million fundraise earlier this year.
And you said high LTV.
Yeah, high LTV, and that's on the inside. If for the outside sellers, the LTV is even higher. It's a very healthy business. Law is not going anywhere. You're actually seeing a lot of investment in the legal space right now with a ton of legal tech companies doing rounds at insane valuations. But I think what's great about Steno and what we've done is we are the masters of our own destiny. We are not beholden to trying to raise the next round. We control the board. Like, it's really nice to be able to have a strategic conversation that doesn't center around how do we get to the next round of fundraising, and instead says, what are we trying to achieve as the end goal? What's the best way for us to get there? We could grow faster and burn a little bit more capital. We could grow slower and get to profitability sooner. Which one of those are we optimizing for? And I think we've taken a really balanced approach to grow and continue to grow, but not put ourselves in a place where we need to go out and raise a $50 million round. I know I said 46, but some of that is debt. And so I think it's a great way to do things. I think, like everything, there's probably balance. It's not black or white to say go profitable, efficient growth only. I think that some of the tools out there from an AI perspective and what you can do with the number of people and how many people you need have changed the equations a little bit, which make it easier to run a profitable business. But Jump just started from Jordan Kennedy and Jason Gelman from Primary. And they raise a friends and family round. That is the only round they're going to raise. And they are going to either make it or break it and try to have this bootstrap business. I think we're going to see more and more and more of that. And then you're going to, fund the company if you need to in the form of like secondary or debt, or some of these other new tools, as opposed to saying, let's raise $50 million, hire a ton of salespeople, keep increasing quotas, and like make it a terrible place to work.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, it's like it also, I think the remote factor almost plays a role in it because, everyone's kind of gravitating towards like interest rates go up, money gets expensive, VCs are holding back. And so everyone wants to get more efficient. But then we also went remote. And it's like kind of staying a little bit lean on the team size is much easier remote too. So it almost sort of makes that whole thing work. Like if you were, how big's your team? How many people roughly?
So the company is 400. I've got 11 AEs and a sales manager, and then we've got a 4-person RevOps team. And then
like that's a nice remote team.
Yeah,
that's a good size. 100 people, you wouldn't really get to talk to all of them.
Sure. Yeah, we're very in touch with everyone all day. We meet every morning, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's tough with remote. I feel like it would be very difficult or maybe difficult's not the right word. It would be very much less enjoyable, I think, to run a large sales org remote because you don't get the FaceTime, because you're stuck to the Zoom fatigue. And like when I think of what was most fun about, being at SinglePlatform or in the air call office or even Doctor.com, which was a bit smaller, but still, we had at our peak about 50 people on the sales team. It's the energy, right? It's going in there and seeing them that's fun and being able to pull people into a room or just walk over to their desk real quick. That's what makes it manageable. But having like 100 people in your remote, I feel like it's just Zoom fatigue, like crazy. Like every time you're trying to deal with something, you're on Slack and you're picking up the phone and you're doing this. And it's just like, I feel like that kind of going remote and trying to go this efficient route it goes well hand in hand together. Actually leads me to the next question because I want to get your thoughts on AI, which you just mentioned a little bit. So there's a lot going on. People are, saying we're going to replace salespeople by AI or replace outbound, all that sort of stuff. I don't think we're anywhere near replacing actual salespeople. I think it's more likely that people are using ChatGPT and maybe they're going to get further through a sales process without speaking to a salesperson, but then they eventually need one, something like that. So maybe I think it's probably just reducing the burden on salespeople. And same thing with AI SDR, right? Maybe we can, in a super, I don't know, repeatable type of model, we can maybe get away with having much fewer salespeople, right? Because they're using these tools and they don't need to, basically pound the phones all day. But it's going to be different for every type of sale. What are your thoughts there? Do you see AI SDR sort of like replacing the SDR role, or do you see it minimizing the team size? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think, 90% of the way there is maybe takes the same amount of time as the last 10%, right? And we are not at that 100%. You can put an AI SDR on the phone and then get the same results as a human SDR. Where I do think is they can be great for inbound stuff. So Regal is doing some really interesting things with if you're a landscaper and you're getting calls all day and you don't answer the phone all the time, well, they can run a quoting process for you with an AI virtual agent. That's great because that person is willing to talk to you already. If someone's not willing to talk to you, I don't know that AI is going to be close in the near term to getting someone who doesn't want to talk to you to talk to you. Yeah. Can it take someone who does want to talk to you and like get the info to then save upfront time? Absolutely. I think that's going to be a bigger use case. And then I think you're going to see it on things like the enrichment side, where you've got AI agents going out and finding the emails, finding the best phone number, maybe even sending emails at some point, trying to prime the pump so that a human can make a higher expected value call as opposed to just dialing this person. I know Nooks is another one that parallel dialing a bunch of that and, the better enrichment and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people trying to play in that space. Clay is doing all of those sorts of things, and it sounds like they're doing really, really well. I think that does lend itself much more to an enterprise motion than the high velocity transactional sale. And again, I'm very lucky. We're calling physical businesses or places that have someone to answer the phone. If you're trying to call a product manager at a SaaS company, that's not necessarily going to be a phone number that you can just easily get, right? Or you're getting their cell phone and it's directly to them. They don't pick up numbers that are from an unknown area code. You're calling a law office, someone's going to answer the phone, and they've got virtual receptionists that handle multiple practices. They've got people, sometimes it's the lawyer themselves because it's a solo plaintiff attorney,
small practice.
That sort of stuff I think is also important. Going back to how do you decide where to work for, who you're selling to and the product you're selling is a big deal. And so I think that's definitely a big consideration also. But AI SDRs, I don't see it in the immediate near term. I just think using AI to make an individual rep more efficient and productive, that's where I think you're going to see the biggest gains.
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually had a note here and I forgot to go back to it before, but you selling to lawyers and I was selling to doctors, but then I went to air call. That was the big difference I noticed too, was like selling to doctors, you can get them to answer the phone. The hard part was we used to call them Barbaras or Nancys. We had categories for how difficult they were to get through and like personas that went along with them. But that was the challenge, was that they were professional gatekeepers. Yes. They were not like the person who answered the phone at the pizzeria who you could just trick and get into the owner. They were professionals because the doctors would ream them out for putting salespeople on the phone with them. Is similar with lawyers? Are they? Some of them are like experts.
Professional gatekeepers, no doubt about that. And oftentimes they have some sort of legal background. They might be like the paralegal or the office manager who like studied law or whatever, but they're in that environment all day. So they can be very tricky to get through. Tools like ReachDesk have been really effective for us.
What is that?
ReachDesk is a gifting platform like Sendoso or something similar. We send out all sorts of gift cards and it's really effective.
We used to buy them lunch all the time at the doctor's office.
So there are ways to get around it, and obviously we've been very successful going from 0 to 1.5 million in 18 months, 0 to 1.5 million a month in 18 months. But yeah, there's professional gatekeepers out there, and you gotta come correct. That's for sure.
Is it a lot of Are you tricking your way through them, or are you building your rapport? Are you
No, it's more
selling
just
through logic?
we want to talk about depositions. And the thing that's so nice about what we're selling, we sell court reporting services. Every law firm has a court reporter. They have to. They are using some company to book court reporters. And when you take a deposition, you legally have to have a stenographer in there to take the transcript. So we are not trying to convince people that court reporting is a good idea or that they need a court reporter. They have to do it. And we're also not explaining to them what court reporting is. They know, they have one.
So it's a
So now
utility,
it's a utility. And
right?
we're saying, we are Uber. You've been using Lyft. You know what Lyft is. We are the exact same thing, same price, same everything, except we pick you up in a Ferrari. And by the way, if you don't like getting picked up in a Ferrari and you want to go get back to getting picked up in a Toyota Camry, that's totally okay because we don't have any contracts. There's no commitments. You can try us out. Turns out a lot of people like getting picked up in a Ferrari instead of a Toyota Camry. And so they're very sticky once they start working with us. But selling something like that when the market already knows and you've just got these insane competitive differentiators is a salesperson's dream. And so that's what we have. And so they know kind of why we're calling. Also, historically, a lot of people are just not happy with their court reporter. The industry has gone through a bunch of roll-ups and it's led to poor customer service and inflated prices and junk fees and all this other sort of stuff. So a lot of people are just excited to talk to us. And then we truly do have a better product. Like I said, paying $100 a year from now instead of $100 right now. And that has led to a lot of wins really, really quickly.
Cool. So, all right. So you're selling a utility, which I like to, because I noticed this at Aircall too, when we would get on the phones with the bulk of our prospects. It was utility type questions. Like they knew what their deal breakers were. They
Sure.
knew, like they just kind of knew what to ask. It wasn't like SinglePlatform or Doctor.com where people are like, wait, what is this?
Yeah.
Wait, what does this do? It was very clear, like we're a cloud-based phone system. Here's how we're different.
Yep.
Do you hate this about what you're doing today? Well, we can take that, take that away. So yeah, that is a night and day difference. You can really be transparent, right? You don't have to necessarily beat around the bush to get your way through. You can lead. It's almost like your elevator pitch is your pitch,
Correct.
right? It's that simple. Okay,
Yep.
cool. Well, we covered one of the questions, which was what is Steno. We just covered that. What does the sales model and process look like at Steno? We covered that a bit here, but I want to walk through that a little bit deeper. How fast is the sales cycle? So you get them on the phone, you make a cold call, you kind of run through the elevator pitch. If they're kind of interested, where does it go from there? Is it just done? You just sign them up right there?
So it's very interesting because they might want to use us, but using us is dependent on having a deposition that you need to get scheduled with a court reporter. So what
Okay.
we go for is what we call positive affirmation, which is basically them telling us that they want to use Steno on their next deposition. Their
Okay.
next deposition might be tomorrow. It might be next week. If it is tomorrow or next week, let's get it scheduled right now. If it's a month from now or they don't have any cases, we'll check back. But what we do in the interim is we have them sign a DocuSign, and that is an action that they can take that basically tells us that there is legitimate interest here. So we really push hard for that because that's in our control. It's a non-binding services agreement, and it's something that they can do no matter when they have the next deposition. So there's no like real reason that they shouldn't be willing to sign it if they're actually interested in working with us and using deferred payment. And so that's kind of a proxy for making the sale. But we reward people for getting that done. And then we reward people when they actually book a job with us. Sometimes we have to stay on people until they book a job months later. And
Yeah.
then we've actually just introduced what is essentially a retention motion where we don't just stay with them after the first case, but we try and get the second and third cases as well. So our salespeople actually stay with a firm until they've booked 3 cases with us. And that demo that I mentioned comes after their first transcript, after their first job, after it's been delivered, where we can show them some of the tools that we've built that make their lives easier. So that's kind of our motion. A lot of it happens I would say within 30 days for sure.
Okay.
In a great case, you'll get someone on the line. They've got depositions that they do every week because they're a busy practice. And that very next week, they're signing the service agreement within 24 hours. You're getting depositions from them within 7 days. That would be like fast. Some of it, only 10% of it takes more than 4 months. So the majority is happening kind of in that first 14 to 30 days, let's say.
Got it. And maybe I should back up. Was there anything I was going to ask? What is Steno? We kind of covered a lot of it. Is there anything you want to add to that product wise? I mean, let me make sure I'm getting it. Maybe I try to repeat back to you
Sure.
what I'm hearing. There's the payments piece, but there's also, are you replacing stenography? Like, is this
No, so we're not a digital court reporting company. We are
okay?
just providing the court reporter. So the way this industry works, and I didn't know anything about this 18 months ago when I joined, but basically, if you're a lawyer and you're taking a deposition, you need a stenographer in the room to record the transcript. That can be virtual or in person. To do that, you don't have a stenographer on staff. They're all 1099 independent contractors. That's for two reasons. One, you're not doing enough depositions to have enough work for one court reporter. Like you're doing maybe one or two depositions a week, right? The second thing is if you're trying to take a deposition of this other party and the stenographer is employed by you, well, then all of a sudden
Yeah.
it's like, well, oh, they write down the wrong words because they're biased towards Collin, and
Yeah.
this isn't an accurate testimony, right? So obviously they're saying that it is and all this sort of stuff, but that's why they're not employed by the law firm directly. So what you do is you go to essentially like a staffing agency, which is what Steno is, a court reporting company.
Okay.
And
Got
then you
it.
say, I have a deposition tomorrow at 10 a.m. I need a stenographer. And we, Steno, have relationships with thousands of stenographers. And we say, okay, cool. We got you. No problem. And we can do that if you have a deposition in 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, 10 months, right? And so they let us know. We get that scheduled. We take it off their plate. That's actually a pass-through cost that gets billed to the end client. So if you're suing someone, you're going to pay for that deposition. And then we provide the stenographer, we provide the transcript. And then with this delay pay option, they pay us when the case settles and funds are dispersed. We also just launched this thing called Transcript Genius, which is essentially Chat GPT specifically for transcripts. So you can now ask, did the witness ever contradict themselves? I'm a plaintiff attorney. What evidence is there of neglect in this deposition? And get these unbelievably high quality answers. That has been really cool to show to these attorneys because that is like replacing associates or
Yeah.
paralegals, even just summarizing the deposition. You
Well, and
might
it's
take 6
faster
hours
too, right? A
way
paralegal is
faster.
going to take 3 hours to get the answer.
At least they have to
Yeah.
read through it, take a
Right.
bunch of notes, type up a summary. Transcript Genius gives you a summary in 30 seconds. And there are
Yeah.
actually startups out there that are trying to charge just for deposition summaries. That's something that we include with Steno for free. We say we're a court reporting company. We make our money through booking court reporters. You don't need to pay us to use Transcript Genius, but we hope that you only work with Steno when you need a court reporter because you get access to Transcript Genius. And that's been going really, really well. So that's kind of holistically what we do. We work with all types of law firms, but a lot of with plaintiff attorneys. And again, like there's this long tail. My team covers anyone that has 5 or fewer attorneys at their office. And we try to get them to use Steno for all of their depositions whenever they may be.
So I imagine you don't really run into the budget objection, right?
Nope.
Because you're dealing a utility, they have a budget for it.
So there are other court reporting companies and there are prices and differences. It's mostly billed by page. Some firms, the Veritex is the biggest competitor in the space. They charge a lot of additional fees. You might be paying X dollars per page, but then there's, double the amount of the whole thing in other miscellaneous fees. We try not to do that. We're very transparent, yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, you are correct. The lawyer does want to make sure that they're not charging their client money for no reason, but at the same time, there's a reason they use FedEx over the US Postal Service, right? You're going to get a certain level of service. And
Right.
not only do we have all of this technology, we also just provide a much higher level of customer service because these are legacy businesses with a ton of antiquated processes, and we are just doing things the right way since we were started in 2018.
Are stenographers crushing it? Are they making good money? You got any insight there? We
It's
had someone who
it's
worked in the office at SinglePlatform who got into that, right? I can't remember her name, but
yes, so it's a very difficult job. Most of the people, the majority of people that go to stenography school do not finish. You have to pay to go to stenography school.
it's because it's
Yeah,
technically
you got to
hard.
be able to type in shorthand and do all this sort of stuff. And
And they
hear
use these
people
weird
talking.
keyboards and stuff, right?
Yes, so that you
Yeah.
can move faster.
Yeah.
It is all over the map. Sometimes you can make there's stenographers that make upwards of 500K a year. They
Wow.
do really big cases, and the stenographer, if you have a lot of parties on a case, there's a lot of copies, and so they type it up, but then they get to sell it 20 times, and so they get paid on that.
Wow.
And so they do
Okay.
one piece of work. It's almost like having a course, right? Evergreen content. Someone buys it,
Right.
20 people buy it. You only made the course once. you only make the transcript once, but every party might need it. And in large cases, that can be dozens or hundreds even of people that need a copy of that transcript, and they all have to pay.
I know it's probably not your area of expertise, but how the hell are they not being replaced by AI?
So there is digital reporting. The thing that we talk about is this is sworn testimony that can make people liable for hundreds of millions of dollars in a settlement or go to jail for a crime that they committed or did not commit. You got to make sure that this shit is accurate. And
And you
so
can't hold an AI liable. That would be holding a company liable, but holding a specific individual liable, there's a lot of risk involved. So maybe
there's
it's
a
more
lot of
likely.
risk. There's also AI is not good at like crosstalk. So if multiple people are speaking at the same time, who's speaking, medical terms, complex things like that, like it can be really difficult. So there is digital reporting that exists, and some lawyers prefer that, and there are obvious cost benefits. But at the same time, the court reporters obviously don't want to see that happen because that's their livelihood.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of value in having a human being the one who can read something back or say, wait a second, I didn't get that. Let's make sure we have it correct. This is really critical. And you can't do that with a digital reporter.
That makes sense. Are you guys looking at sort of getting into that space in case that takes off? I'd imagine there's some laws too, right? Like maybe you have to have a human
different
doing
states.
it, right?
It's not legal in many states. There are a couple that have made it okay, but yeah, you can't just do that everywhere. So
Got it.
we'll see how it plays out.
So it's not your focus. Cool. Well, what are you hiring for, and who should take a look?
Yeah, so we hiring classes just like I've always hired. We're looking for another, I think, 4 to 6 people to start February 20th and join our inside team. Hard work, mental investment, positive mental attitude. Those are the 3 pillars of our sales floor. It is hard, but it's not complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, right? And so we are looking for people. I think SDRs that want to be AEs are a great fit. We have kind of a unique way that we train people and just a unique take on being a remote AE. So training happens in person in Denver. It's a week long. And then you go and spend 2 weeks with 4 hours a day over Zoom with me. So in the morning, you do 2 hours of group cold calls. So one person is calling, they're getting feedback in real time, everyone's listening, and then we rotate. Then you make 2 hours of calls on your own. Then you do 2 hours of listening to me make calls to law firms and kind of show you what success looks like.
Do you guys mention fruits
on your own? What's that?
Do you mention fruits on those calls?
We have played that game. You are such a peach. Really appreciate you taking this message. So we do that for 2 weeks, and then to start your 4th week at Steno, you come back to Denver for another full week, but this time it's with the existing AEs as well. So everyone gets to meet each other, hang out. You sit next to someone who's been doing it for a while. You kind of get it now because you've been doing it for 3 weeks, and you get to have that energy of a sales floor. Because you said it earlier, being together in person, you can't. There is an unreplicable energy when you are in person in a floor. And so we go to this hotel in Cherry Creek out in Colorado, and we recreate a sales floor for the week. We just do our jobs. We have a lot of fun doing it. We spend time together. And it really makes me so happy to see our team that is spread out all over the country develop genuine friendships because they see each other. And we get together in Denver roughly every 8 to 12 weeks. So every 2 to 3 months, we come out there for a week. We work together. It's a lot of fun. And so if that sounds exciting to you, if you're an SDR that wants to take that next step, or you just love sales and want to go into this high velocity environment, then we might be the right fit. Pay is very competitive. 65K base, 72K bonus on target. So 137. We will hire people with no sales experience at all. We will hire people with 2 to 3 years of sales experience. I think after that, there's maybe other opportunities for you. But that's been a winning formula for us. And the entire team has hit at or above goal every single month this year, which is another thing I'm really proud of. So it is a place where you can come and win and have a lot of fun doing it.
100% quota attainment will definitely get people's attention. And you're totally on the money going for the SDRs, looking for the promotions. What sounds very unique about this opportunity is they can start pitching without having to get into like a full demonstration, right? So you're saying
it's not
they're
a
just
technical
going
sale.
Yeah,
you're talking to attorneys. You do have to come correct. Like I said, they will eat you up and spit you out in 2 seconds if you're not on point.
Yeah.
But if you are, they listen, they understand, They're rational, intelligent lawyers. And what we have truly is rationally good for them, which puts us in a really strong position to close a lot of law firms. And that's what we've been doing.
So it's easier to sell Steno to lawyers than it was to sell SinglePlatform to lawyers.
Oh my God. Yeah.
For sure,
I thought
right?
you were going to say SinglePlatform to restaurants, and I would still say easier.
Well, we
Steno to
tested lawyers at one point,
Yes. Yeah,
and that
yeah,
was
yeah.
really hard. I remember,
Yes.
but yeah, it was like it was the classic like, wait, what do you do? What, you're going to
Yeah.
list our menu, our service? What, like? But yeah, so you're calling with language that they know about. It's things they know about. It's here's the value. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So SDRs who are out there, or even I guess early AEs who maybe are not super stoked with what they're working on, this seems like an awesome opportunity. And if you're looking at 100% quota attainment, I mean,
These goals are made to be broken. This is not a let's have 80% of people attain the plan. Like, nope, monthly commissions, like you should be earning at or above 100%. Let's set people up to win.
oh, that is a perfect note to end on, man, because I've been preaching that from the rooftops. I'm like, how has this industry evolved into like, well, we make our plan that 80% will. I'm like, so you're literally making a plan that 20% of your people fail. That's your plan. What? Like, why? Why is that your plan? Well, that's the numbers we need to get here. But like, no, like it's literally math in a spreadsheet. You could change that math. If you're saying that they have to hit this quota to get this OTE, well, maybe your OTE is too low and you should just jack that down and get everyone to 100%. And then they crush quota. Like, it's just become this like dilapidated. I don't know if that's the right word, but the math that's been used has been outrageous. And I just think back to SinglePlatform, and I actually wanted to ask that. I forgot to even add it in there of like, what was the mindset when setting quotas at SinglePlatform? Was it specifically what you just said? Like, we want everyone crushing this, and we'd rather, have a team of people that are averaging over quota, and even maybe make the quota look easy for some people. Like for me, at a certain point, it became kind of easy to hit the quota, but it wasn't easy for everyone. Right. And so like, it was still, there were some people that missed, but like, I think every month we mostly as a team were hitting the number, because you have people who beat it and some people who miss it. And so I feel like people should maybe not hit their quota every month, but at the end of the year, they should balance out to being over quota because they achieved it some months and they came under some months. And of course, not every rep is the same, but generally speaking, like I love that mindset, and I think we need to get back to that. And great advert for recruiting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think it is a goal that's set that, if we set a goal, we hit it, and it should be a challenge. It should not be a layup, but you shouldn't be planning for people to miss. You should be planning for everyone to get there. And you need to figure out as the leader what you can do, whether that's hiring higher quality people, giving them more tools to help them succeed. But I have no problem with a bunch of people getting 150%, but everyone getting 100%. That to me doesn't mean we need to raise the quota so that they only get 120 and some people miss. That means you need to design a plan financially where that still works for the business, but that's really easy to do even in the beginning stages. And I think it's okay to overpay your early salespeople because the numbers are a rounding error. It's not that many people that are getting overpaid. And then over time, the goals go up. And that's totally okay as you add more tools and the business becomes more mature and you dial in on what good productivity looks like. But yeah, I set a goal hoping and planning that everyone gets to at least 100%.
It makes so much sense. And the value of that, like a lot of it's just invisible. Like the finance guys can't see it. They can't see that the morale is better.
Right.
They can't necessarily see that like you're retaining your reps way longer than other companies.
Sure.
And that when you're hiring, you're able to present it the way you just did, which means it's gonna be easier for you to hire people than if I asked you what's your quota attainment and you were like beating around the bush, like not really comfortable saying it. Like all those things matter. All those things cost money. And yeah, I mean, it just drives me nuts when they even call it an on-target earning. And then you're like, but wait a minute, you just said you plan for 20% of people to miss it. So where's the on-target part? Like, how are you even defining that word?
Yeah.
Because that's not on target. Your target is that 20% people miss. So your on-target earnings needs to be reduced because it's a lie. And it's like when you start talking like this to finance people, they fucking hate it. But, it's just logic. And at the end of the day, I mean, having a team that's winning will always pay dividends long term.
Totally agree.
So steno.com, steno.com. You have, I imagine, your job postings and stuff are up there?
Absolutely, they are.
Cool. And everyone should check you out on LinkedIn if they're interested in the job. Is that the best place to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out, send me a DM, letting me know you applied, and I'll make sure to flag your application.
Cool. And where should people follow you? I know you've got Twitter, you've got LinkedIn. Are you posting anywhere else, or you're
I
just
am more of
focused
a
on the job?
content consumer than a content creator, but yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter, I would say, are probably the only places that you can really find me. But yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It was awesome to catch up. We'll have to do it again sometime.
yeah. Thanks for having me on. Great catching up.
Likewise.